Greenblatt, you described it as a house of cards on a house of cards. Could you give us a little more in-depth explanation of why you say that?
Sir, this was on the based on the old model using work orders, and then you had the 35% markup tacked on top of the work orders. Our concern is that our review established that the work order data was inaccurate and unreliable. So then when you add on, so that's one house of cards, and then when you add on the 35% on top of that, we're concerned that that's another house of cards built on top of that. It's an unstable foundation. And then they're adding, an across-the-board markup on top of that. I'll note that they have asserted to us that they are moving away from that over the last couple of years. The final implementation of moving away from that process is underway now and should be done according to the NPS this year, this fiscal year. But the estimates that have been used for years, the estimates that were driving GOA, appear to have been, as I said, a house of cards built upon a house of cards.
So, Mr. Greenblatt, where did this 35% markup come from? Have you been able to ascertain that in your investigation?
According to the NPS, this is based on the Federal Highway Administration. Their 35%, they apparently apply a 35% markup on theirs. Now, what it is, according to NPS, is that before they would look at just the actual costs of, say, construction for a particular project. And now they are adding on additional costs, those sort of peripheral costs or ancillary costs, such as compliance, such as project management, other items, which may be legitimate. And now they said they weren't including them in the past. In 2021, they elected to include those in, and to do so, they effectuated this 35% markup, which comes from the Federal Highway Administration. We have a number of concerns about that. It's not necessarily that there shouldn't be additional costs incorporated. That may be completely valid. Our concern was on a couple of different ways looking at this. One was, is the 35% number in and of itself appropriate? Two, does it apply across the board? There may be different types of projects that warrant different types of markups, either none or perhaps even arguably more than 35%, depending on the project. The third thing is these are all based on the assumption that these jobs will be done by contractors. And there is some subset, an appreciable subset of deferred maintenance projects that will be done in-house and therefore wouldn't warrant that markup. And so those are the nature of our concerns about the markup, and that's why we questioned that over the course of our review.
Did you ever get an answer for a rationalization of why 35%? Have you gotten a good answer?
We don't believe it was adequately justified. What I understand is that they've referred to the FHFA amount and have DOI adjusted a policy to include the incorporation of some of these costs. We don't feel like the justification that NPS used for the 35% number across the board was adequate. Frankly, it wasn't sophisticated enough and wasn't nuanced enough to give a fair representation.
Should this committee have full confidence in the National Park Service going forward dealing with this issue?
That's a call for you all to make. We're looking at the numbers that they were putting forward. I would say it's incumbent on the Park Service to get the numbers right, and for us, meaning me, in my office, GAO, and the members in this room right here, right now, to exercise oversight. Because as you're looking at the GOA reauthorization in the next year or so, that this is going to be critical to understand the magnitude of the issues at play.
Mr. Johnson, seems to be much different conclusions between the Inspector General and GAO. Why is there such a discrepancy?
Sorry. Well, there isn't a discrepancy. I think a lot of what we found in our work, very similar findings. We point out the 35% markup in our report as well. We've also identified the same data management challenges as the IG report. In regards to the 35% markup, We agree with our accountability colleagues here that it needs to be transparent, that they need to justify and document that. We do also believe that trying to estimate project execution costs is a best practice, but it's also a best practice to make sure that you're transparent and that it's justified and documented.
In your opinion, should this committee have full confidence that the National Park Service is going to turn around this really big problem?
So the National Park Service has been given a lot of resources over the years to address this particular issue. And I think the work that we have done here is it is looking like that they are following a lot of the leading practices, but they have to remain consistent and diligent with what they're doing. So it's one thing to actually fold the leading practices into your policies, but you actually have to apply them every day.
Thank you for your answers. And next, I'd like to recognize a gentleman from Hawaii, Mr. Case, for 5 minutes.